Hi everyone, welcome to the Level 2 COP Session 2. We are so glad that you're here with us today and we're excited to get started on this learning with you. Please make sure that you have a comfy spot to sit and just remember that this learning today is completely on demand. So feel free to pause the video, take breaks, do the video in a couple of different sessions, whatever works for you. We want this to be the best learning experience for you. So please feel free to take those liberties. So our agenda is listed here for today. We're going to start with a little bit of introduction activities, and then we will move on to a section all about supporting paraprofessionals. And I wanted to preface this section by just letting you know that the reason that we are teaching today about supporting paraprofessionals is because of your feedback. So thank you again so much for participating and engaging in our Level 2 Session 1 COP and for commenting and interacting with the other members of the Level 2 COP on our Padlet. There was a lot of talk about hopes for how to transfer this learning and what kind of learning, what type of resources we could share with our paraprofessionals because they are working with our students every day and unfortunately usually have the least amount of training as far as the Level 2 staff goes. And so we took that feedback and we compiled some learning opportunities for you today based on your feedback. So we hope that that is a beneficial learning experience for you today. After that, we will move on to something called differentiated output hierarchy with AAC. So differentiated output hierarchy is just basically some different ways to allow our students or to invite our students to show what they know. It's based from the START project, the Grand Valley State University START project, and we'll go a little bit more into that in that section. And then we'll be bringing in some AAC. Gail will be doing that today. Next, we'll move on to learning about SUP aids and services and AT and the IEP. So obviously you guys all know lots about SUP aids and services, so this certainly might be a review for you. We're hoping you can grab, first of all, that it will be a good review for us all, and then also that you can hopefully learn a new thing or two that you can grab from this learning today and apply to your practice. We will move on to visual supports after that, because as we all know, visual supports are an evidence-based practice that have such a huge impact on our students. And then we will end today talking about AT reading supports. Gail will present that section. So just to remind you who our team is, most of you have already met our team, but we do have a few new members of the Level 2 COP joining us today. And so Anna Weston is the member district supervisor of specialized instructions for Allegan Area ESA. And Gail Evans in the middle is our assistive technology consultant. And then myself, Susie Post, I am a consultant for K-12 special ed. I specifically support the districts of Plainwell and Hopkins, but I'm also involved in professional learning opportunities for Allegan Area ESA. So these commitments that are listed here are commitments that we would love for you to take a moment to read on your own. And then again, just like last time, if you participated in the session 1, we'd love for you to choose one today that you're feeling like you might need to put a little bit of extra focus on in order to have your most productive learning session. So go ahead and pause the video and read through these and choose one to keep in your mind for today's learning. Thanks so much for doing that, taking a moment to choose one of those commitments. We're excited again to learn with you today and hope that this learning experience is beneficial and that it's a really comfortable and worthwhile experience for you. So as an introduction today, even though we are, not actually together in person or virtually, since this is an on-demand experience, we'd still love to kind of do a little bit of a introduction activity together. And so some of you might know this activity, but it's called Rock and Feather. And the purpose and intentions of this activity are to facilitate mental and emotional transition from outside the meeting, which all of us have so many things happening in our lives right now, I'm sure, And, we're busy with families and work and, so many other things. So we're going to facilitate our mental energy and our emotional energy from those things that are certainly here and they are with us. We're going to try to facilitate our energy from those and then into this meeting today to be present in this meeting. And obviously, again, this meeting is not face-to-face or virtual, but we are meeting together in this on-demand way. So we do want to make sure that this time is as meaningful and beneficial and that we're really able to put our mental and our emotional focus here. So here's the process. I'd love for you to do this out loud, and I know that might seem weird, but it really is a powerful thing to actually state these things out loud. So first, think about what currently really feels heavy for you or is weighing you down. One or two things that are your rock today. And then, what is something that's currently lifting you up or bringing you joy? So go ahead and think about those. Feel free to pause the video, state your rock and your feather out loud, and then we will try to focus that mental and emotional energy into our meeting and let those things go for just a few moments today. Go ahead and pause. All right. Thank you so much for doing that. So I wanted to share with you kind of a stance that I wanted to take today. And this is called a START-ism. Some of you might be familiar with START-isms. They come from the Grand Valley State University START project. The START project has several START-isms, but this one is a new one that I recently found and was really excited about. So as you can see, it's be curious, be open. And I thought that was just so appropriate for our learning today. And honestly, our learning always, right? We're always trying and striving to continuously be learners. And as we learn new things, when we know better, we do better. So being open, being curious to continuously try to improve our practice and allow our mindsets to be changed if that's something that needs to happen. And so I wanted to read to you the START project's description of what this really means. Being curious encourages us to ask questions and consider perspectives that may be different from your own. Being open encourages us to listen and be flexible. I love that. And to challenge our own thinking, even when we may not agree. When we embrace curiosity and openness, it frees us to understand the actions of others and respond with greater awareness and sensitivity. And I would think that would be something that all of us would strive to do for sure. When our approach is closed and we make assumptions, we are more likely to make snap judgments and react in a way that limits our opportunity to learn and work together. Be curious. Be open is a call to action for all of us to create a community that is respectful of differences and make space for learning about each other. So I just love that description. I love this STARTism. When I read that and thought about adding it to our learning today, it just really energized me and helps me to get in a mindset of truly trying to live that way. And it is not easy, especially when we're passionate about certain things. And but I think just being curious and allowing ourselves to be open, challenging our thinking, and then eventually maybe arriving to where we were, not changing our thinking possibly, or possibly arriving at a new place from new learning and new thinking. So I'm excited to jump into our learning now with that mindset. All right. So one last thing for our introduction is these outcomes. So I love this phrase, small shifts equal a big impact. So again, we are certainly not at all, our intention is not for you to, learn these new things and completely change your whole entire practice right now, go into your classroom, do all of these things. That would be incredibly overwhelming and it would not be effective. And so our ask of you is just that you be curious and be open to possibly finding one small shift today. That's it. And then hopefully we'll continue to make those shifts as we grow, right? So our wow today, our walk out with, is that we'd love for you to, again, think of that one small shift that you will make in your effort to support the inclusion of your students with disabilities. So as we're going through our learning today, just be thinking of that. And if you find something that you feel like, yeah, this is something that one, I think could make a really big impact, and two, isn't going to, overhaul my whole way of doing things. It's just a small shift, but I think I can do this, and I think it's going to be worth it. Then hold that in your heart and make sure you keep thinking about that throughout. And then we'll encourage you to apply that to your practice when you leave today. All right. So supporting paraprofessionals is our first section, like I spoke about earlier. And I wanted to start by just kind of doing a little bit of learning or a review for most of you, some of you, about what truly is a para's role in the classroom. And as I've been in a lot of classrooms, I'm finding that there's certainly different beliefs and views on what a para's role really is when supporting several students with disabilities in a classroom, or whether that's a one-on-one situation or just a classroom support. There's definitely different camps of thinking about that. And so I thought about what really is the definition of para? What actually does that mean? And the definition of para is alongside. So a paraprofessional is a professional who comes alongside the general education teacher and supports that teacher, right? Or comes alongside a student, maybe and supports that student. So it's certainly not someone who, takes over or does for. It's someone that comes alongside and supports and works with that person. So a paraprofessional's main role should be to facilitate independence for our students in each of those three overarching learning components by continually working on fading supports. So there's a lot in that section, but just to kind of unpack that, I would love, and I'm not sure that this will take on, but I would love to change what we actually call our paraprofessionals. I would love to call them independence facilitators. And I know that some schools do that actually, but certainly not all. But I think if a paraprofessional could think, my job, my main role is to facilitate the independence of the students who I'm supporting, I think that would really shift some of the practice that's happening by those paraprofessionals. At least for me, if I'm trying to put myself in their shoes, a parapro, I kind of like traditionally, I think the role of that parapro is certainly different than I would think of myself as an independence facilitator. Wow, that really shifts the things that I would be doing, the actions that I would be doing to support my student. And then those overarching learning components, I'm going to click here, and you guys can do that in yours as well. But just to take a look at this. So those overarching learning components, I linked us back to level one COP session 1, where I did some teaching around each of those. But just as a reminder, those three learning components for all students, regardless of disability or not, are participating in routines and transitions, engaging in grade level academics and other skills, and then interacting with others. And these three components are all equally important in a successful student, in order for a student to be successful in school. And so we want to make sure that we're considering all three of those and seeing those as equally important. I think in some classrooms that I've been in, the academics, the grade level academics seems to take more of the time than the interacting with others and the participating in routines and transitions. And so I always encourage the staff that I work with to make sure that we're seeing those three as equally important to a student's success. So there's more slides on that. If you'd like to take a little bit of time to review, you can certainly pause the video and go through those if you need a little bit of review about each of those. I'm going to head back over here. And then the last part of that sentence says, by continually working on fading supports. So I know I have worked with some of you, and some of you are amazing at this, honestly. You know that your goal for students is to facilitate their independence, right? And so you take them where they are, you provide the just right supports that they need right now, and then you continually work on fading those supports as they gain independence. So that is honestly the main role of a paraprofessional as well. And so really trying to support your paras by helping them to understand that. Maybe first step, just changing what you call them to independence facilitator, and helping them to understand that their job truly is to help that student to become more independent in those goals that they have in these 3 areas. All right, so just a little caution here that you might want to share with your paras. I really liked this graphic. I think it does a nice job of describing what this unintended challenge could be. So it says, beware, unintended challenge can arise for students because of paraprofessional support. So I want to preface this by saying I 100% believe that most paraprofessionals, most if not all, paraprofessionals truly love kids, and they are doing what they feel is best to support those students. But unfortunately, sometimes the type of support or the amount of support can have a detrimental effect on the student. It's obviously unintentional, but these are the challenges that could arise from that happening, from us providing either too much support where the student ends up, having some of these issues, or just not the right support. So first, becoming dependent on adults. I'm guessing that all of you have seen this, or most of you have seen this occur with either some of your students or students that you know of, that they end up really depending on that adult instead of gaining more independence while working with that adult. Interference with friendships. So we know that, and it's hard. I won't get too far into it, but students that have a paraprofessional or have a paraprofessional work with them too much, we certainly want to make sure that students are getting what they need in order to be successful. But if the paraprofessional is working with them in a way that makes it so that their peers are really not able to interact much, or even in some cases at all, with that student in a typical way in the classroom, then that can have a long-term effect on their friendships. And that's certainly, again, not intentional, but a real thing. Provocation of behavior problems, separation from classmates, paraprofessional relationship replaces the peer connection, and then stigmatization, which has an impact on belonging. So all of those things are really closely related, and again, not at all an intentional thing, very much unintended, but also very real and something to be aware of. So instead, let's be independence facilitators, and let's help our paras, or let's help our independence facilitators understand how to do that, what truly their role is, and give them some strategies and some skills to be able to do that. So that's what we're going to try to do today. All right. So I'd love for you to start your maybe new learning. Maybe this is something that you know already, and you could just have a nice review and maybe grab 1 or 2 new pieces. But this is an article from the TIES Center, which is an incredible resource. If you're not familiar with the TIES Center, I would highly encourage you to take some time when you have it, maybe not until the summer, I realize that. But whenever you have some time, if you're looking for some great resources related to students with significant support needs, the TIES Center is a great one. So this article is called Understanding the Role of Paraprofessionals in Your Child's Education in Inclusive Classrooms. So exactly what we're talking about here today. So I'd love for you to pause the video and take a few minutes to read through this article. And you can click right on the article and it will bring you to it. And then, we will come back and do a little bit more learning around paraprofessionals. So go ahead and pause. All right, thank you so much for engaging in that learning. I hope you were able to pull out, like I said, at least 1 or 2 new pieces of information. And if not, then hopefully you were able to get a great review and kind of spark your memory on some things that you could share with your para, your independence facilitator, about his or her role with your students. So there are 4 more resources that I wanted to share with you today. And each of these are links. So if you click on it, it will bring you right to the PDF. And you can print these, you can laminate them, you can share them electronically, whatever works best for you. So this first one is called Academic Supports on the Fly. And that is an incredible resource, honestly, something that if I was still teaching, I would 100% print this, laminate it, put it in one of those binder clipboard things that they can keep everything in, so that my parents could pull this out while they were still learning these strategies. So what it does is it basically just goes through and lists some of the most common academic challenges. So for example, worksheet is too dense or crowded. What should I do? So something on the fly, right? So this is what's so cool about this. These are not supports or strategies that paras need to prep. They can see the problem, see the barrier, see the challenge, and on the fly right now, quick help the student, support the student. So their suggestion for worksheets too crowded and dense, cut the paper up and isolate the sections to minimize an overly crowded page. So it seems super simple. But if we haven't had training in this area, right, or you haven't worked with students in the past, maybe your para is new, or haven't worked with a student who's needed this type of support. It's a really nice little chart here to support them with that. And then tips for implementation too, which I love. Just use the scissors on the teacher's desk. And I know that it seems like, okay, yeah, obviously, like don't go to, a different classroom and get scissors, whatever. But remember that when we are in somewhat of an anxious state, which a paraprofessional might be, feeling a little bit anxious, right? We can relate to that. A student is struggling, they're, becoming escalated because they're stressed out that their worksheet is too crowded or too much on there, then the paraprofessionals might feel heightened, right? They might start to feel a little bit anxious as well. And when we feel anxious, it's really challenging to use our logical part of our brain. It's hard to access that. Our IQ actually drops significantly when our anxiety is heightened. And so sometimes we might not think like, oh my gosh, there's scissors right there on the teacher's desk. So these simple little things, reviewing these, every once in a while can really be helpful in a time of anxiety, time of stress. So I'm not going to read through all of these just for the sake of time, but there are lots of different challenges for students and some ideas for how to support them on the fly. So again, great resource. This is from inclusiveschooling.com, another awesome website that I direct staff to all the time, and I used myself as a teacher. All right, let's see this other one. So this next one is called 100 Ways to Incorporate Choice in Learning. So we know, obviously, that providing choice in learning is an incredible motivator for students, and that it's, an evidence-based practice that is proven to support academic engagement. So I could talk on and on and on about incorporating choice in our learning, but this is another great resource from Inclusive Schooling that talks about just different ways to incorporate choice. And I love how it organizes the information. So Julie and Christy did a nice job of thinking about different categories and then different ways to incorporate choice. So the first category is choice of learning ways. So if a student is struggling and, not getting started or refusing to work, a variety of issues, sometimes providing them a choice. Hey, you know what? Like, I don't feel like this is like a great spot for you to learn right now. Let's choose a different spot. I have all these ideas for you. Choose one and see if they might like to do that, to try a different way or a different way of learning. Location. So where could they sit? Where in the room? Lots of different ideas for that. Choice of time. So when they could complete something and how long they would work on something. Choice of interactions. With whom, how, for how long. Choice of grouping. So size and makeup. And obviously I know that not all of these things are, in the student's control at times. So that's why there's a variety of options, right? Sometimes you cannot choose to, have a certain group. Your teacher is going to choose that for you, and that's just how it's going to be. But we can then look in one of these other sections and choose, something different to present to the student so that they feel like they have some control and some say in the learning to help them be motivated. So choice of movement, reading choices, it goes on and on. Choice of content, choice of process, choice of product. Those are differentiated instruction principles. So again, another really great resource that if I were teaching still, I would absolutely print this out and laminate it for each of my paras, stick it in their little folder, binder, whatever you provide for them to take from class to class. All right, this next one, another great resource from Inclusive Schooling. This one's called 100 Ways to Adapt Anything. So we know that one huge task that parapros often have to do is making those accommodations, those modifications, and those adaptations to our students' work in order to help them to be successful. So this is a really nice job of, first of all, these foundational questions. I'm going to take a minute to read through these for you, just because I think it's a really worthwhile experience for us as special educators and also for our independence facilitators. So the foundational questions read, how can this adaptation, accommodation, and/or modification work to support the student? How can we support this student to be even more successful? In what way can we increase participation? In what ways can we provide support that is just right? What are the students' strengths? I love that. Skills, gifts, and abilities. So a strengths-based approach. And then how can we use the students' strengths to create an access point? So I think continuously coming back to these questions as we're making our choices for how to support a student is really beneficial. And then this resource goes down into the different types of supports that we can provide for students in the inclusive setting. So first, environmental supports like reducing physical or visual clutter for students. We know that students with disabilities, and honestly, all students, beneficial for all, right? Essential for some. Do better, right? Are able to focus more, are able to put their energy where it needs to be in a place where it's not visually and physically cluttered. So anyways, not going to go through all of these, but peer supports are huge. I know most of our districts have peer-to-peer programs, and we are off and running with those programs and seeing huge success. So some different ideas for peer supports in addition to our peer-to-peer programs, or maybe alongside. Pacing supports. Some great reminders about supporting students with pacing, equipment supports, presentation of material and content, materials, self-management supports, social supports, assessment supports, and human supports. And then there's a little section down here about after deciding the support, then we're going to kind of ask these questions. And the one I wanted to highlight is this one on the bottom that says, when and how should we fade those supports? So obviously that is something that your paraprofessional would be talking to you continuously about. If it's big things that we need maybe a fading plan for, but always keeping in mind that we want to make sure that we don't put a support in place and think, oh, there we go, that's going to be the rest of their life, they're going to need that support. We want to make sure we're presuming competence of our students and presuming that they are going to keep growing and keep learning, and we're going to fade those supports to continue to facilitate independence as they grow. All right, and this last resource that I wanted to share with you is called Access Points for Common Activities. So we know that some students really struggle to access, right? To access gen ed curriculum, to access learning in their inclusive settings. And so in every activity that we do in an inclusive classroom, we want to be thinking about access points and adding in access points for our students in order for them to be able to fully participate and make progress in that classroom. And so I love how this is organized as well, again, from Inclusive Schooling. First, it talks about when they're sitting and listening, right? We know that a lot of the school day is kids sitting and listening to a teacher teach. And so for some of our students, for many of our students, that's really challenging for different reasons. And so we have a list here of how we could add an access point for our students. So for example, give visuals to look at. That often will really support students' learning, helps them to remain focused, helps them to take in the information. We know that we take in information visually way faster than we take information in auditorily. Movement breaks, an FM system, a rug or a mat to help to support boundaries of where the student should sit. Lots of different ideas here. And I'm sure you have other ones too. When students are asked to present something orally, that can be a huge challenge for some of our students. So there's some different access point ideas there. When students are asked to take a test, dreaded for many students, some access point ideas here. For example, a review of test strategies, or review of the information, a practice test. And some of these things are, things that are already happening, but some great ideas for further support. And then when students are asked to complete worksheets, which again, we know happens all the time at school. And for many of our students, it's a really challenging thing to get even started on a worksheet or to finish and submit that worksheet. So some ideas for access points there. During discussion, during note-taking, and during using a computer time, and then during reading. So again, just a really cool resource. Oh, and there's even more. Getting organized, writing. Perfect. So a really cool resource that lists out just some ways to support our students' access, and then, of course, their participation and progress as well. All right. So I have two activities here that I'd love for you to engage in next as we continue learning about how to support our paraprofessionals in their work, in their work of helping us and helping our students. So the first one here is the Inclusion Podcast by Julie Costin and Dr. Julie Costin and Dr. Christy Pretty-Franzak. And again, they are the founders of Inclusive Schooling, which is that website and that resource that I've provided all of those resources for you from. Awesome resource. So this podcast, if you click here, it's called Fading Paraprofessional Support, Strategies for Success in Inclusive Classrooms. So this is exactly what we're talking about here today. So this podcast is a little bit long. Let me see. I'm trying to remember how long it is. It'll let me. I think it will. It's about 18 minutes. So not super long, but it will take a little bit of time. So I would love for you to pause the video and go ahead and take as much time as you need to listen to that podcast. I would encourage you to take notes while you're listening. And I do not have like a specific note-taking, format or anything like that. However it works for you, if you choose to take notes. But there's some really awesome stuff in here, and some great things that I would assume that you are going to want to latch on to and share with your independence facilitators. So that is the first task for you now. And then the next one, this document here, they will reference this document in the podcast. And so I grabbed this from the website for you and just wanted to share it with you to kind of give you that visual as well. So this is called the prompting ladder, and I'm not going to go super deep into this, but they'll give you some teach you about the prompting ladder and what that means. And this again is something that I would 100% print off for my independence facilitators if I were still teaching, and would add it to whatever their binder or whatever it is that they take along with them to each classroom, just to help remind them that we want to make sure that obviously we're always being as least intrusive as possible, because we're trying to facilitate that independence, and we're going to move from the bottom up to the top of the ladder as needed, hopefully never making it to that top, but trying to stay as far down as we can, but obviously providing the just right supports. So okay, enough of me talking. Go ahead and pause the video and just sit back, relax, and enjoy the Inclusion Podcast. And come on back when you're ready. All right. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to that amazing podcast. I think it was amazing. Lots of great information in there. Those women are just so incredibly intelligent and so passionate about inclusion. So, um, just wonderful always to listen to them and learn from them. So the 5 questions, I pulled them out of the podcast when I was listening, and some of you might have done the same when you were taking your notes if you chose to do so. But I just wanted to highlight those questions. So the 5 questions are listed here. When we are trying to make sure that we are facilitating independence of our students and fading those supports. So I'm not going to read these. I'm going to let you go ahead and do that on your own. So go ahead and pause the video and read through these questions just to kind of keep these in mind as we continue learning. All right. So again, I just wanted to remind you, you've been working for a while. Again, this is completely on demand. So please, if you are feeling, sick of sitting here and you need a break, you need to, go take a little walk or whatever you need to do, feel free to do that. We would encourage you to do that. Go get a cup of coffee and then come on back with that be curious and be open mindset. All right. So another, this is still part of our, supporting paraprofessionals learning. But specifically, one of the, or several of the comments that we saw in our Padlet last time was related to supporting students' behavior. That is a huge challenge for our paraprofessionals. One, because behavior is hard, right? When students are struggling with behavior, it's hard to support them, and that's just real. It's hard for all of us. And then also, or second, paraprofessionals we know have, like I said before, the least amount of training, and so they might not, have the basic or the more advanced training that you and I have. When it comes to behavior science, understanding, why we behave the way that we do, or when it comes to how to support students' behavior. So they might not have that training and that those skills, right? That skill set. And so I pulled together some more resources for you. The first 4 on the left are all again from that inclusiveschooling.com. And then the one on the right here, the 5th one, the 8 de-escalation tips for teachers, that is not from Inclusive Schooling. That's from a different website called We Are Teachers. But I just loved that graphic. So I am going to quickly go through each of these for you as well. And again, totally would encourage you to pick, which ones you feel like might be most beneficial for your independence facilitators, and print them off for them, laminate them, and provide them with these resources that they can use as they're continuing to learn and become more competent and more comfortable with supporting students when they're struggling with behavior or they need some support with de-escalation. So the first one here, whoops. All right, so the first resource that I wanted to show you was called Steps for Responding to a Big Emotion. So oftentimes students have big emotions that come out in different ways, whether they're an elementary student or a middle school age student or a high school age student. That can look different for all kids. But there are different steps here that the ladies at Inclusive Schooling list to support our response and the way that we respond so that we do our really important work of helping the student to de-escalate instead of become more escalated. So step 1, allowing them to, first of all, just feel that emotion. Our feelings and emotions are what they are. They're not bad. They are what they are, and we can't necessarily control the emotions that pop up, right? So letting them feel that and letting them know that it is okay and normal to feel these emotions. Step 2, connecting with them. So we are humans and we all desire connection. It's a human need. And so instead of, the traditional, things that we've tried before, maybe And I certainly have done this of, trying to squelch the emotion and stop it right away and, stop the behavior, um, allowing them to feel that emotion, to let them know that it's okay and normal, and then connecting with the student to make sure that they feel seen and they know that we are there to support them and that we're going to be with them while they work to become regulated again. And then we do the important work of inviting the student back into the green zone. So these are some strategies of ways to do that. We certainly don't want a student to become escalated and stay there and just, trash a classroom or whatever the behaviors might be, of how the student is reacting due to that feeling. We want to support them and help them to come back into that green zone because they don't want to be there either. They don't want to be in, the red zone or wherever they are. They truly desire, and their bodies desire, to become regulated too. Oftentimes they just don't know how, and they need us to help them. And then once the student is back and regulated with whatever strategies we used, and this is just a short list, there's certainly so many more, and some others are included in the other resources that I provide too. The last step is just collaboratively problem solving. So continuing to co-regulate with them, providing that connection, that coaching and modeling, helping them to soothe their system. And then we really want to help them to re-enter and re-engage in whatever activity they were in. That might take some repairing. That might take some continuing of the activity that they did not complete or whatever it might be. But our goal is to help them to re-enter, re-engage in a regulated state, and move forward. All right. The next resource here is called the top 10 ways to reduce stressors. So most of you are probably familiar with PTR, which stands for Prevent, Teach, Respond. And we know that behavior science shows and research proves that prevention strategies are incredibly impactful, can be incredibly impactful in supporting students' behavior. We don't just always want to wait until the student behaves in with the target behavior that we're not looking for. We want to try to make sure that we are supporting the student with prevention strategies so that they don't have to behave in that way to get what they're looking for, or to meet the function of that behavior. And so 10 strategies are listed here and described. Go quiet, ask open-ended questions, give visual support, offer breaks, get creative, show compassion, reduce the size of the group, reduce inputs, so that sensory input, reduce demands for the time, not forever, because of course we're going to fade that support, and that might be faded quickly within a class period even. And then slow down and provide more time for processing. And those are all listed or described on the right side as well. So a great, just like quick resource to remind our paraprofessionals and maybe ourselves too, how to try to prevent the student from needing to behave with that target behavior, and to help them to be, to stay regulated and not feel stressed. All right, this next resource from Inclusive Schooling is called Strategies for Presuming Competence. I would love for you to just take a few minutes right now to pause the video and take some time to view this resource. I think this resource honestly is a shift in mindset. It was for me a while back when I was first learning more about presuming competence and really kind of looking inward into my practice and my belief system around inclusion in recent years. This idea of presuming competence and truly presuming competence was truly life-changing for me. And if you have more questions about presuming competence or are interested in learning more or kind of digging deeper into this, please feel free to email me anytime or text me. I think I put my phone number on there as well in the front of the video or the slide deck. But I have lots of different resources, some great videos from Shelley Moore, Dr. Shelley Moore, and some other resources about presuming competence that I'd be happy to share. So again, please pause the video, take a few minutes to do some learning around presuming competence, and then come on back when you're ready. All right, thanks so much for doing that. I hope you were able to grab a few important and useful pieces of information from that. and would love to hear from some of you if you want to learn more. So the next resource is called the 4S's for supporting all students. And I'm not going to go through all of those for the sake of time, but I'll just kind of explain the 4S's are safe, soothed, seen, and secured, are secure. So when we make sure that students are feeling those things, when we do everything that we can, everything in our power to try to make sure that kids feel safe, that their bodies and their central nervous systems are soothed, that they are truly seen, and that they are secure, then we see an increase in positive behavior and a decrease in those target behaviors. So there's some really great strategies in there that you could share with your independence facilitators. And then the last resource is this de-escalation tips for teachers. So this is not a brand new resource. It is something that I used when I was teaching. I had this up on my wall for myself. And it was something that was really helpful for me when my students would struggle with their behavior. This was something that I would look at all the time to remind myself how to help the student instead of hurting the student. And now, of course, again, presuming positive intent, none of us are trying to hurt kids. None of us are trying to, escalate them more, anything like that. We are all trying to support kids and help them to be successful. But sometimes when kids become escalated, we naturally start to feel more escalated ourselves. And then our IQs drop, and then we do silly things that we know we shouldn't do, but we react because we're feeling anxious and we're trying to stop the behavior. But just, these tips are some really great tips that just helped me, and I'm hoping will help you and your independence facilitators to achieve what you're truly trying to achieve, which is helping your kids to get out of that escalated state, right? And back into that green zone. So 8 tips there that I would encourage you to print off, laminate again, and have at the ready. All right. So to finish off this section, we are going to do a little think and reflect, and I'd love for you to go to the Padlet for this think and reflect. So there is a QR code here. My face looks like it's covering it. I will move that. So the QR code is here, and this is also a link to the Padlet. And I'm going to click on it for you just to show you that this is not the same Padlet. This is our level 2, session 2, think and reflect, and it does look a little bit different. So I just wanted to take a minute to explain this to you. So when Gail created this Padlet, she was trying to think about just new ways to interact with the Padlet, because it was obvious that you guys really liked the Padlet, that you loved interacting with each other on it. But the way that we had it set up the first time, it was a little clunky, where everyone was commenting like on the same section of the Padlet, and it was hard to like that person's comment. It was impossible. Or to directly comment to someone that had, made a post. So the new way to interact with the Padlet, if you look at this middle section, is that you are actually, every time you want to comment in here, or to put information in here, you are actually going to click on the plus sign, which is down at the bottom, and you're going to make your own post. Okay. And it says now everyone's individual posts can be commented on and liked. So then what you get to do, you make your post about whatever it is that you'd like to share. And then you can also take a look at everyone else's posts. And if you have a comment that you'd like to place on their information, you can do that. You can also like their posts, which would be awesome because we all want to encourage each other and work together here, right? And support each other. So we're hoping that that's a little bit better of a structure for interacting with each other. And then we also included a link to session 1, to that session 1 Padlet. If you would like to go back and view, and some of you probably didn't have time to go back and view everyone's responses after you had interacted with it. So we'd encourage you to do that if you're interested in doing that. And then right here, we created a post that's purely for that Finding Paraprofessionals podcast that we listened to. So if you would like to comment about that podcast, we would ask that you don't create your own post. We'd actually love for you for everyone to comment. If you have something to share about the podcast, we'd love for you to comment about it in this post. So this one will be a really long, thread on one. But Other than that, we'd love for you to create your own post with whatever you'd like to share or talk about with each other. All right, so I'm gonna head back. Go ahead and take some time to do that. Pause and thinking about that whole section about supporting paraprofessionals. So the article that you read, the podcast that you listened to, the learning and the resources around behavior, the learning about facilitating independence and fading support. So anything that you'd like to say, maybe like an aha, right? Something that was like really new to you or challenged your thinking in a really good way. And then maybe something that you're still wondering about or still aren't sure about, but you're curious and you're open to it, just not quite sure yet. Okay, so go ahead and take some time and then come on back. All right. Thank you so thank you so much again for interacting with that Padlet. We're excited to view all of those responses and to learn what you guys are thinking and just to see what information really sparked your interest and what wonderings you still have for future learning. So this next section is going to be quite a bit shorter than the paraprofessional section because that was what you guys had asked for. So we wanted to make sure we included a ton of information in there for you to support you in what you were wanting support in. But this next section is all about differentiated output hierarchy with AAC. So the differentiated output hierarchy is listed here. There are 5 different ways that students can show what they know, kind of different strategies. So open-ended is the first one. We'll go into each of these in brief detail in just a moment. Visual organization strategies, closed strategies, choice, and yes-no. So this link here is a link to the GVSU START project, and this is an article all about differentiated output hierarchy if you're interested in learning more about it. So open-ended questions are those questions that we see all the time in our classrooms, and they're definitely the most difficult for students, for many students, but for many students with special education services. They're those questions that we just have to come up with an entire answer all on our own. And there's a couple, more details here. But if we are supporting a student or if our paras are supporting a student and they're really struggling to answer open-ended questions, then that should be a trigger in our minds to say, you know what? I need to do a little bit of accommodating here in this gen ed classroom to support my kids. And I'm going to move to that next differentiated output strategy in the hierarchy. And that would be visual organization strategies. So the purpose of these is to provide a student with a kickstart, which might assist them in organizing the answer. So they really were struggling to come up with, that open-ended answer. We're going to provide a little bit of visual support. So some examples here, showing the student how many words or sentences are required. So not telling them the answer, but just saying there's 5. You just need 5 here, okay? 5 words or 5 sentences in order to answer that question. Just giving them a little bit of structure like that. Some other details about visual organization strategies. What they do is they show a student how many words or sentences are required, like we said. We could list those directions instead of putting them in a big long paragraph. We can list them out in bulleted form. So just providing a little bit of visual structure to help our students to process information. Another example is color coding. So we can use different color markers or different color highlighters to help the students to have visual organization to support their processing of information. And there's a couple other ideas here too. I'll let you read through those. But again, just different ways that we can support their visual organization to give them a little bit of a leg up and a little bit more support if needed. So I've got some examples that you can take a look at. So number your page from 1 to 5 and write your spelling words after I say them. So the visual organization that we provided is we just numbered the page for them. So for some kids, that's really hard. And it's hard to think about where to put those numbers. And I'm taking a spelling test, but why do I have to do numbers, right? It just becomes overwhelming for some students. So the object of the lesson is not the numbering of a paper, it's the spelling of the words, right? And so giving them that just little jump start, saying, hey, let me number that paper for you, and then you do the spelling, could be what they need in order to get that behavioral momentum going and to give them that boost of confidence. Right here, so, oh, and I think my screen. So here's another example. Write each basic word where it belongs in the chart. So in this example, the teacher or the paraprofessional, all he or she did was just highlight different parts of those words, right? To give that student a little bit of a leg up. They were underlined already, but that might not be enough for some of our students. They might need that color or that little block to give them more visual organization support. All right, so for some students, that still might not be enough, and that's okay, right? And so we want to make sure that we're shifting our supports and moving up in that hierarchy as needed. So the next strategy, the more significant support that we could provide to still help our kids show what they know, is called close strategies. And what close strategies do is they organize the students' output within the curriculum. They also narrow the depth of the curriculum, and they really allow our kids to utilize recognition skills instead of recall skills to output that information, which can be a game changer for some of our kids. So here's some examples and ideas. This is the traditional fill in the blank. That's probably the most common closed strategy, is just creating blanks for students. So instead of them having to write out the whole sentence or the whole answer, we can fill in some of those words for them and then create blanks with the essential information that they would still be allowed to prove that they've mastered the content or they truly have knowledge of the content, but they're not having to write so much, right? Or think of a whole, nicely structured sentence if that's something that's a challenge for some of our students. A word bank is another great closed strategy, just to provide them, again, not with the answer. They still have to know which word goes where and make sure that they're showing that mastery of content, but it's giving them just that extra level of support. Page of number or reference, highlighter tape, and the list goes on. And there's some math examples there, highlighting the formula or providing a formula. And here's a few examples in action. So this is an example of a fill in the blank with a word bank. So using 2 of those strategies to support the kids. So instead of having to write all of this, which is a ton, and would be really challenging for most of our level 2 students, we can support them with these strategies, with these supports. So this one shows what it was like at first when they did a visual organization strategy. So they went from just like blank, this page was totally blank, that's open-ended, right? And then the teacher or the parapro gave numbers to give a visual support, and that still wasn't quite enough. So then they decided to move on in the hierarchy to a closed strategy. So creating those blanks. And we could even go further than that by creating a word bank, etc. This is an awesome example, and this is something I used to, for many years, I was a special ed teacher, and I supported the students in math at the middle school. And this was something that I did all the time when we were working with more challenging concepts like this, right? With these expressions or with formulas or whatever it was. And so this on the left side was the typical worksheet that was handed out, and the students had to solve it. This on the right is an example of a closed strategy in math. So it's a visual organization strategy using those colors and helping them to organize, and then also adding in those blanks for the students, supporting them with the different shapes as well. So this is pretty complicated if you just glance at it, but once you really break it down, it makes a ton of sense. So this would need to be explained to the student, of course, but they would grasp onto this and hopefully be able to use this structure to support them. Some kids would, if it's enough. And if it's not, then we keep on going, like we will in a minute. Another example here are the algebraic equations. Another example with fill in the blank with a word bank, and they actually split this into 2 sections, which is really a great idea with 2 different colors. So instead of keeping these paragraphs together and having just one huge word bank with 10 or 11 words in it, they decided to split it into the 2 paragraphs to provide that support. And still, kids would need to show, they would be showing mastery of this content by completing the work this way. Another example here, instead of writing 5 sentences and just having this blank, lines on a paper, we can support them with some different structures. So some visual structures and some closed structures. And then they do have to write that whole paragraph, but all they're doing is transferring the sentences that we supported them with into the bottom here, into paragraph form. All right. For some kids, that's still not going to be enough, and that is, again, okay. So we're going to always start with, the open-ended, see if they can do it, and if not, we'll move on through the hierarchy to help them to be able to show what they know. So choice strategies is next, providing the choice, and we'll go through some examples here. So it gives them a visual method to recall information, and we certainly are going to use this with all the other strategies that we've already learned about in the hierarchy. So some examples are color coding a word bank and making there just be 2 choices, right? So limiting those choices. Color matching for multiple choice. Picking between 2 instead of 4, so reducing those assignments, reducing those options. Blocking out choices, that's such a quick and easy thing that we can do on the fly, one of those on the fly supports. Putting pictures of the 2 choices, so providing a visual and making it just 2 choices for them. A combination of all those other strategies, and then 2 choices in sentence format. So here's an example. This is vocabulary. So from the list provided, choose the correct vocabulary word to complete the sentence. So they did a really nice job of using color to support the student instead of just giving this huge word bank, right? And all of these questions like the class is getting initially. They decided to kind of put them into different colors to give the students a limited amount of choices for each question. This one here, circle a word that's spelled correctly. So instead of having a spelling test where the kid has to write out the word, if they're not able to do that with the grade level words, instead of giving an alternate spelling test, we can support students by doing a choice example. And if 3 choices is too much, you could do 2. But in order to spell words, we have to first recognize words, right? And so if we look at this first list, if the student is able to recognize that the middle choice is the correct spelling for visualize, then they would circle that instead of having to actually write it out. More evaporation happens during 2 different pictures here. So night or day. So instead of having to write the answer or come up with that from their brain, they can look at these pictures. So that's a visual support and a choice support. And then the highest level of support for differentiated output hierarchy is a yes/no. So if all of those strategies in conjunction are still not enough to support the student's ability to access and participate and make progress in the gen ed setting, we would move on to a yes/no format. So we change the format of the question into yes/no, and we overlay all of those other strategies, of course. So are the following words spelled correctly? So instead of choosing from a list of 3 or even 2, it's a yes/no. So we're looking at this, visualize. Is that spelled correctly, yes or no? Thesis, yes or no? Another example here, that same assignment about the Spanish-American War. So instead of having a fill in the blank like we did before, we are going to turn those into yes/no questions. So the blank rebellion against Spain, Cuban or American, we would change that to the Cuban rebellion against Spain, yes or no? So is that a cause of the Spanish-American War? So same content, just different ways to show what you know. So we are not going to go through these today, but I wanted to provide these, and if you would like to, you are welcome to pause the video and take a look at some of these examples. But this again is from the START project, and I love that this resource provides different examples and strategies for several different grade levels. So starting in 3rd grade, going all the way up to 11th grade, Algebra 2 here, and then there's videos for each of those. So again, if you'd like to, feel free to pause and explore that website. And if you don't have time right now, you could always just keep this as a resource and come back to it if you're working on that. All right, and next up is Gail. Gail's going to take some time to teach us about differentiated output hierarchy for AAC users.
Thanks, Susie. So let's talk about differentiated output as it concerns AAC users. So as a refresher, AAC stands for Augmentative and Alternative Communication, and an AAC user is someone who uses some type of support to communicate. So an AAC can include gestures, writing, drawing, pointing, or an app on an iPad. When you're asking students to respond to questions verbally, you still need to think about different ways that your students with AAC will be able to answer. Some of the same strategies that Susie shared about visually organizing handouts and quizzes for students to show what they know can still be used when seeking verbal responses. For example, students can be given choices between visuals to point to, and they can be asked yes or no questions. No matter what type of AAC a student is using, you need to become familiar with the words the student knows how to use to communicate with it. And then when an opportunity comes to teach more words, you need to decide when a specialized word should be added or taught. So if they're using an iPad with an AAC app like LAMP or TD Snap, learn how to use the word search feature so you can look up a word to see if it's already on there. And you can also talk to your deaf and hard of hearing consultant if you're working with students who do sign language to ask them what signs do the students already know. So when deciding if a new specialized word should be added to the device or a new sign taught, then ask these questions. Will this new word be used often throughout the student's day in life? If not, can the student answer a yes or no question about the topic? Could visuals be created for choice making about the topic? Can the student use other words on the device to describe the new word? For example, to indicate volcano, then maybe the student would be able to use exploding mountain instead. Whether you're deciding on adding new words to a device or teaching students new sign language or picture symbols, make sure you use a team approach. Have the speech path, the deaf and hard of hearing consultant, the special ed teacher, gen ed teachers, everyone should be helping to make these decisions. And lastly, make sure to challenge your AAC users. You won't know what they know until you give them an opportunity to show you. So here are some tips for working with them. Give them at least 10 full seconds to answer. They may need more, they may need less, but before you ask the question again or add more information, just have it be quiet for 10 seconds so that they can think about what they're going to say and then use their device. And we should always assume positive intent. Always assume that they know the answer and that now they have words in front of them, they can generate the answer so that we can understand them. And if they don't seem to want to answer, for as long as you've given them the wait time and the words are on their device, they kind of know where they are, and they've listened to the information being taught, then brainstorm with the student's team for some solutions. So let's switch gears and talk about supplementary aids and services, specifically about AT and the IEP. As you're aware, supplementary aids and services are ways that we can support students to be successful in gen ed classroom. I'm often asked, what about a teacher who allows everyone to use Chromebooks and so everyone has access to speech to text and text readers and large print and that kind of a thing? But what we need to do is focus on the student first. What supports does the student need, not what the teacher universally provides? So if the student needs a Chromebook or needs something that will provide speech to text so that they don't have to write, they can just speak and it will talk, or they can just listen to text. If they need that to be able to get through their assignments, then it has to be written in the accommodations, and it has to be written in supplementary aids and services, even if everyone has access to it. And the second thing is that often I see that students are refusing or they're just not using their accommodations. And but we need to be more diligent about why aren't they using it. So maybe they need training, maybe they need different activities to do, but we need the team to review it and to look at the data and to revise those. We can't just sit back and say, well, they're not using it. I also included this document on sub aids and services. So this might be helpful to kind of look through. It has a section on the do's and don'ts, and then also some examples of how to write them into the IEP. So there are two areas of need that must be considered for every IEP. First one is, are there communication needs? And the second one is there a need for assistive technology devices, and services. So keeping in mind the differences between AAC and AT. AAC provides a voice for individuals with limited verbal communication, and AT stands for assistive technology, and that includes tools to help students read, write, sit, move, eat, do math, and communicate. So that's why they kind of have it separated. Are there communication needs? Are there needs for assistive technology devices and services? So focusing on, is there a need for assistive technology devices and services? I'm just wondering, how are you deciding if there is that? Are you just checking the box just to kind of get through that? I wanted to make sure that you knew that there is a decision-making process to decide that answer. So this is a great document to help guide the discussion on assistive technology considerations. So here's a flow chart to tell you what you should do if the student is making progress or if they are not, and if they need assistive technology. Also, if you're deciding if there is a need, you could use this SET framework. It's a simple tool that helps decide the need. What I like about this tool, we have 3 different ones, one specifically for AAC, one for any type of technology. What I like about this is it keeps the tools last. So SET stands for Student, Environment, Task, and Tools. Often we are driven by the tool first, and we really need to have some conversations about what the student needs, what they have available in their environment, and specifically the tasks that they need to do. Then we can talk about the tools. The second page are the questions that help drive the conversations for each of those sections. And there's also, this is a more formal one that Andrea Jackson and myself created. This is still the SET framework, but it's organized in a way to help a larger group kind of get through it with the least disruptions, I guess we could say. So we start with the norms and talking about the students' strengths, etc. And then we're really going into the SET part of it and establishing what tools we're going to try, and then the whole training plan. And so again, a little bit more formalized document, and sometimes that's needed for students. And then a third question is, did you know that there's a list of possible assistive technology that a student might possibly use? And so this is a 10-page document. It's pretty comprehensive. And this first column really talks about the instructional area. And then the second column talks about the stuff that's probably already in the classroom. And then I like this accommodations section. And then we get to the tools. So again, there's writing stuff, spelling, reading, of course there's math. So a complete document that has a lot of information if you're struggling to figure out what is available. So during our in-person meeting in March, we'll have a chance to explore these documents further. So now it's time to think and reflect about these last few topics. You can jump on the Padlet and use that plus sign to record your thoughts. And also you'll be able to comment on other thoughts if you'd like.
Hi again, everyone. So we thought it would be really beneficial, a great review, and then hopefully some new learning as well for us, and then also that we could potentially share with our independence facilitators and other level 2 staff about one of the most impactful level or evidence-based practices for our students with disabilities, and that is visual supports. So some of you I know firsthand are experts with creating visuals, with using visuals every day in all aspects of your practice and in your teaching for your students. But just a review of just some ways that we can use visuals to support our kids. So first of all, just a reminder that we all use visuals every day. So visual supports are beneficial for all of us. And they are essential for some kids and some adults as well. I know for myself, one of the visuals that I use is my calendar right here. So my calendar on my phone is a visual that I use constantly throughout my day. I am what's called an agile worker, so I support lots of different districts and lots of different staff, different groups of people, different staff. And so I'm always on the move, and without my calendar on my phone, my Outlook calendar, I would not have any idea where it was supposed to be each day or what I was supposed to do. So I use that as a visual support for myself. So I'd love for you to just take a minute to think about a visual support that you use for yourself, whether that be your calendar on your phone, or maybe you're more of a paper person and you have a paper agenda that you use every day, or a paper calendar. So many other visuals. I'd love for you to just think of one that you use every day. So some examples are here of visuals that I have used as a teacher, or that I have supported other teachers in using to support their kids. So lots of great examples here. So why do we use visual supports? First of all, spoken words are temporary. They're only available for a brief moment, but visuals we know are permanent. They're there, they can be permanent. They're there for as long as the student needs them. They support independence, which obviously we've talked about a ton today, that it is our goal to make sure that we are facilitating and supporting independence for our students and continually trying to help them to become more independent. Visuals help all students. So this is a really cool way for paraprofessionals, or for you if you are in a classroom with your students in a gen ed setting, and you and a gen ed teacher are working together. This is a really great way for you to use your area of expertise, which is in specialized instruction and specially designed instruction. You could provide some opportunities for all students to be more successful by offering visuals, right? So they don't support just our students with special needs, they support everyone. And I think that that's a really great way for you to have even a greater level of involvement, or for your paras to do so. Utilizes strengths. So many students with disabilities have a strength in visual processing. And so why would we not want to build on that, right? And to support our kids with opportunities to process visually if that's where their strength lies. They help establish and maintain attention. They clarify verbal information. So I know firsthand from teaching that if I would just tell kids something and list them the steps verbally, about half my class, if not more, would try their best, but they would not follow those steps accurately. But if I quickly wrote them on the board, or had picture visuals that I could just stick up there with magnets or whatever I had prepped, it was a lot better percentage of students, a lot higher, who would be able to follow those instructions. And then it's also a skill, not just a strategy. So we want to be building a skill set for our kids, because when we build a skill set, then our students become more independent. So we're not just providing little strategies. This is a skill that students can use in so many different areas of their life and transfer even as they transition to adulthood and into the community. So another of my favorite startisms from the GVSU START project is write it down, write it down, write it down. So this one I had posted up in my classroom for myself when I was teaching, and absolutely is a great reminder that anything that I say, we need to make sure that we make it visual as well, whether that's writing it down or providing a picture. Make sure that it is visual. Flood the environment with visuals. So I would love for you to take a few minutes to take a look at this resource. And it's kind of up to you. I'm going to leave it up to you of how much time you'd like to spend on viewing this resource. Some of you will get going in this and you will become captivated, go down a rabbit hole, and spend a lot of time. And if you would like to do that, that is awesome. This is from the Affirm. It's an Affirm module. And this is a packet from there, so you don't need to have a subscription or anything like that. This is just a packet from there. But it goes into basically what visual supports are. They're evidence-based. It goes into that and gives you some tips about visuals. So again, a great resource that I'd love for you to click into. Spend as little or as much time as you are interested in and as you have capacity for. All right. So our Think and Reflect for this visual support section is here. I have 3 questions that I've listed here that I'd love for you to contemplate, and then head over to our Padlet And remember to press the plus sign and add a post. So the first is, what visual and organizational supports, if any, do you already use in your classroom? Guaranteed all of you are using tons of visuals in your classroom and in the gen ed classrooms that you are supporting your students learning in. So what's one or two that you're already doing? The second question reads, what is one visual support that you want to begin to use in your classroom or in your inclusive classrooms tomorrow? So like, what's one quick thing that you might want to try? And if you're not ready for that, that's totally okay. But if you are, we'd love to hear about something new that you'd like to try to implement. And then what necessary steps will you take in order to put this support in place in your classroom? So do you need some help creating this? Do you need to ask a colleague because you've seen it in their classroom and you'd like to use it in yours, or use it in the second grade classroom that your students are in and you're supporting in there, whatever that might be? What are the steps that you might need to take? So head on over to the Padlet. You can pause the video and answer either one or all three or a couple of those questions in a new post.
So you made it to the last section of this session for level 2 training. And I'm going to share with you some newsletters that I created. I sent them out a couple years ago, but they still have really good information that focuses on assistive technology tools to support reading. So we know that some students need text to be larger and different colors. They need there to be less distractions. So in newsletter 1 will show you some tools that help with all of that. In newsletter 2, research shows that listening to text actually helps students' reading fluency and their comprehension. And it can also improve reading skills in older students because it exposes them to more text. So this newsletter shows a lot of resources that allow students to listen to text. In the last newsletter, we are sharing resources that help students read to learn. So let's get started with newsletter 1. So once you get to any of the newsletters, you can jump to the other ones. So they're all kind of connected. So this first newsletter has links to the newsletters 2 and 3. And then the second newsletter has links to 1 and 3. And the third has links to 1 and 2. So you'll always have access to all of them. So let's start out by talking about how important color is for students. So the first resource I want to share are color transparencies, allowing the students to be able to choose what color they want their text to be. And so you could have just a variety of transparency overlays that you would get from Walmart or Myers or something like that. And you just let them put that over text. Just have a wide range of them and let them choose their own color. And color transparencies help soothe the eyes, and it helps students with dyslexia to be able to read better. So we also have reading guides. So they're more narrow, and so students can kind of drag those guides down a page. And I thought this was interesting. So this teacher made her own reading guides. She took a piece of transparency, and these are very helpful, but they are pretty expensive to have a bunch of those. And she just took transparency film and she drew a straight line over the transparency film. And then you could also even see how a student could drag that down the page to help them track. And you could also add a highlight above that line, and that could also help. I do encourage you to try color. Let's give a little try here. So if I'm on this slide, look at how this bothers, at least it bothers my eyes. It's kind of hard to read that. And most students are not going to choose that color combination. But when I move that out of the way, look at how the white and black is so much better. I just wanted to make the point that color does matter. And everyone's eyes are individual, and you just need to let the student choose which color is better. They may choose a different color depending on the time of day, or even the day of the week. A couple of options for more intensive support. It's always important for students to be able to be as independent as possible. And so we have some students, little fingers or fingers with fine motor issues, and we still want them to be able to turn the page of a book. So here are page fluffers. You can make page fluffers out of just about anything. And but again, it helps the students be able to be more independent and explore books. And another kind of intensive support is this special paper. It's waterproof and rip resistant. You can just put it into an inkjet color printer, and it will print. And they created this for to make menus at restaurants, but it's really helpful for our students. Even if they kind of like wad it up, you can just straighten it right out, and it'll still have a few wrinkles, but they wouldn't have wrecked the paper. The special paper is really great to make homemade books or any other like practice materials that you're concerned that the student may kind of tear into. These are just more durable. So I'm going to show you Helperbird, which is a free extension that is built into the Chrome browser. So all your Chromebooks will have them. And they have 2 free tools that are built into the extension. And knowing that extensions change over a while, so some things that are free start to cost money. But right now there are 2 free tools in it. And basically you open up a website that a student is supposed to read, and then they turn on Helperbird and it will read the text for them. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. This link here takes you to download Helperbird. And with this link, it's just a practice website, kind of like a typical website. I wanted to show you how it works with Helperbird. So this is Wikipedia, has a lot of text on here, a lot of distractions also. But if I turn on Helperbird, which is up here, already kind of installed, and then I can go into this reading mode. So when I tap here, you'll see that now this kind of changes, and it's a lot less distracting. And if I click on here and then click on this immersive reader, now I have options to alter the text. So I can change the color if I click here. Now this might be a more soothing color for somebody. And there's the increased spacing so that the words are spaced out more. The text size can be increased also. And with this, we have grammar options. So I could have just to have all of the verbs highlighted. So we can be talking about that. It used to do syllables, but it no longer does syllables. The Microsoft stopped supporting that feature. But you could have fewer lines so that while the student is reading, and again, this reads out loud. So I'm going to close this.
Martin Luther King Jr. Day, officially birthday of Martin Luther King Jr., 1, and often referred to shorthand as MLK Day, is a federal holiday in the United States.
So you can see how that could be helpful for students. So changing it to different colors and the size, etc. And so I found that sometimes you run out of free use of immersive readers. So you'll need to keep an eye on that. This might be a tool that you may want to purchase for somebody. One drawback is that if you don't purchase it, there's so many things here that students could get distracted. So I'm going to jump back here. I'm going to turn off Helperbird. So now I want to show you Announceify, another totally free extension. And if I click here, that takes you to the Chrome store to get it. But if I click over here, this is my text that I want to use. Okay, and so now here is another website that's pretty busy, has a lot of things. Oh, good. They could bet and gamble. But what you do once you get here to help make this not be such a busy site is that now I'm going to click on Announceify. So very simple. I just click on one tool and then it automatically starts reading for me. So I don't have to highlight anything.
Diver fulfills his dream to photograph the cutest sea creature ever, discovered just 30 years ago.
And what I like is,
this may
notice
be the
what
most
it does.
Adorable sea creature in the world, and seeing
it blurs out everything except for what's being read.
The diver until now. Yuzuk Fukumai fulfilled that dream by capturing underwater photographs of the cartoon-like Costa Seal, a sea slug.
The text over here. So again, another great tool that's free. This one is Announceify. The other one is Helperbird, and you're looking at reader mode and immersive reader inside there. Okay, let's bounce to the second newsletter. I'm just going to go here. So in newsletter 2, we're focusing on text readers. And so text readers typically means that you would highlight text and then the text would read out loud to you. So iPads have that feature built in, and in iPads it's called Speak Selection. And these, if you click here, these are the directions for turning that on so that students always have access to it. By default, it's usually turned off. But once it's turned on, again, students can highlight the text and have it read. Inside iPads, they can actually ask Siri to read the screen. In Chromebooks, they also have a feature where you can highlight text and read it. It's in their accessibility features, and this are the directions for how to turn that on in Chromebooks. But what I've found is that there's an extension that works better than the select to speak in Chromebooks. So when I click on this comparison chart, you'll see different text readers. So across here are names of text readers, and then along this column, these are the options that they have. And so Natural Reader is my favorite one. That's why I put it here. And it's the best that I have found so far because it does work inside Google Docs. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. And you have a choice of voices. It can read in different languages. You can upload a document to it. It's really very powerful. It has pretty good sounding voices for it. So I would highly recommend using Natural Reader to listen to text on Chromebooks. In this section, I'll let you kind of go through and watch the demo of it, but Google Lens is an app. It's actually a tool inside of an app that allows you to take a picture of environmental text, meaning like a poster or a menu or something on a wall or something. So you take a picture of it. And so Google Lens will read the text that's in that picture. And so there's a demo for that. And adding audio recordings of someone reading a text is a great thing to have. So again, the student would just be listening to text. They don't have to highlight anything. They can just listen to it. And this allows you to record human voices. So Invocaroo is really easy to use. And this I recommend, for example, grandparents reading stories or older siblings or whatever. Because it has such a simple interface, if I were to tell you that this website will record your voice, what button do you think that you should press to record? I bet most people would say this. I've taught my mom how to use this. I've taught students who are cognitively impaired how to use this. It's an easy tool to use. Okay, so let's try Vocaroo. I'm just going to press this button. And now it's recording my voice. And I know it is because I can see the countdown. But so I could be just reading the directions for an activity. I could be reading a chapter of a book. I could be reading anything. And when I'm done, click here and I can listen to it. And now it's recording my voice. And I know it is because I can see it. And there's no editing tools. I either want it and save it or I do it over again. So I'm going to click on save because this is where the real power of it comes in. Now I am able to download that file. I can create a QR code so that a student or parent could just scan it and then listen to that file. And I could share this link inside an email for someone. So Vocaroo is a great, easy tool to use that will allow you to create audio files for your students to listen to. So I wanted to point out that text-to-speech is a great proofreader. We should let our students listen to what they have typed, and then they can make corrections when the sentences don't sound right. It's an easy feature that all students could be using. So now let's jump to the third newsletter. And this newsletter really focuses on how can we get students to read more? What are some ways we can do that? So starting out, we could find some high interest, low reading level books. And the Teacher Next Door has some. Let me jump here. So all of these on this website are high interest, low reading books for upper elementary. And so you can see how here's a suggestion of all of these. And of course, you would have to purchase those. And going back here, High Noon also has a lot of books. Again, are the high interest, low level reading. And these can be for a little bit older students. I really want to show you Bookshare. So Bookshare is an online library of accessible books. So when I get to Bookshare, I'm already logged in as a student. And Bookshare has hundreds of thousands of books already put in here. They have all of the textbooks in here, as well as novels that you would be reading in classrooms. All the student would have to do is find which book they want to read and click on Read Now. And this takes them into this reader view. And I always teach the students, first I give them an option of changing some of the colors. And we can have some of the things just kind of spaced out more. And you can have the voice be faster or slower. There are some choices of different voices. Google US English is an okay one. And then, so then they could just push play. Discovering World Geography, Eastern Hemisphere. But what I also show them is that to go down to this like table of contents. And so and they have to scroll up to the top. So if the teacher says to everyone start reading on page 168, then this jumps to that page. Eastern Hemisphere. And now they're ready to start reading. So Bookshare is totally free. We have to register the students online, and they do need to have an IEP, but it really opens up a wide world of reading materials for them. And let's see, the last thing I'm going to show you is Rewordify. So Rewordify actually rewords the text so that it is easier to read. So you would copy and paste text into here, and then click on Rewordify Text, and it would make it into a more simple document. So I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to go to the demo, click on Next, and now it has this text in here. And all I have to do is click on Rewordify. And now look what it did. It changed, and if I hover my mouse here, you can tell that it changed the word waif to poor homeless child. The powerful ruler was a czar. But what I like also is it has other strategies to help students learn what a waif is, so that it's not just giving them simpler text. It has them, so it has them actually learn something. And so now I can click on here, and it has flashcards for learning these 3 words. So I'll let you kind of play around with that also. And now you have access to these newsletters, so you can get to them at any time. And of course, reach out to me and I can help you as well. So last time to jump on the Padlet. So I would love to know, what reading supports are you using in your classroom already? Are there any reading supports that I showed you that you can't wait to be using in your classroom tomorrow? And what are some steps that you need to put into place so that you can use these? Like, do you need to get in touch with your tech department? That could happen. So make sure you click on the Padlet and the plus sign and answer any of those that you wish. That's it. Thank you for completing session 2 of the Level 2 COP. Anna and Susie and myself are really excited to see you in person on Thursday, March 6th at 8:30 at the AISA building in Allegan. If anything changes with that, the location or the time, we'll make sure that we let you know. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the Padlet.